guys for tuning in today. Today we're going to be going through the basic components of what makes up a computer. Today's presentation is brought to you by the Salina Media Connection, Jabot LLC, Salvation Army, and a digital grant from Saline County. I'm Jason Bathon from Jabot LLC, and let's get started. All right, so here it is. This is a basic computer. We're going to go through some of the basic components of what makes up a computer and what you need and some of the differences between some of the components. So, of course, you have to have a case of some sort. This is the case that you're going to use for holding all your components in. You have to have a motherboard, which is this big piece in the back. You have to have a CPU and a CPU cooler, which is this part that's on here. And you have to have RAM, which is random access memory. You have to have a hard drive, which is this little guy right here. And you have to have a GPU. And last thing you need is a power supply. Those are the basic components you guys need to make up a computer. And we're going to go through each one and kind of sort of talk about the differences between them. So there's the basic components. Let's set this to the side real quick. Okay. One of the main components has always been the CPU, and that's this guy right here. This is your central processing unit. This is what does all of the computing power for majority of the tasks. This used to be the most expensive computer component, but now recently, the last 10 years or so, the GPU, which is the graphical processing unit, has become the most expensive component of a computer. The CPU ranges from, anywhere from $100 to about $500 for a consumer grade processor, and they have additional processors beyond that, but for the standard consumer grade processor, about $100 to $500 is what you're looking for performance-wise. These come in different generations of processors like your phone does. So just like you have an iPhone 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 14 now, CPUs have gone through different iterations as well. For Intel, there's two main components processor manufacturers, and that is Intel and AMD. Intel has the i3, i5, i7, and i9, and those are the majority of the CPU components that you have. But they also have different generations, and currently one of the most recent generation is the 14th generation Intel processor. We recommend basically having an i5, an i7, or i9 for majority of your gaming computers and pretty much high-end computers. But you can do the i3 if you have like a basic computer that's going to be checking emails and doing some streaming stuff like that. There are two different brands, the Intel and the AMD. AMD has the Ryzen series, which is going to be the Ryzen 3, the Ryzen 5, the Ryzen 7, and the Ryzen 9, which are all comparable to their Intel counterparts. They are on the 9th series of processors, so they have the 9000 series out right now, but that's the majority of the processing powers. So if you're going to be doing some light gaming, I would go with an i5. Some heavy-duty gaming, I'd go with an i7. And if you really want to have the best performance possible, I'd go with an i9 or a Ryzen 9. The difference between a Ryzen 7 and an i7 versus an Ryzen 9 and an Intel i9 is only about 3% difference between the two, so there's not really a majority of performance upgrades from going from an i7 to an i9. It's not that big of a jump. But i5 and i7 will do the majority of what you need to do for either gaming or workstation computers. So that's your CPU. On top of the CPU, you're going to have a CPU cooler, which you can easily see this is an air cooler. This is like a basic CPU cooler that goes on top of here and keeps this guy running cool. You can switch out that component with what they call a liquid cooler, which is an all-in-one AIO cooler like this guy here. Has a two 140 millimeter fans and a radiator and a fan and cooler. Kind of sort of like your car. It has everything that your components for your car does. It has a radiator, has fans, has a pump. So there's two different ways to cool your CPU. Going down the next list is graphics cards. So these are the graphics cards from a basic one, a really, really older basic one here, to kind of sort of like the newer generations here. And this does the majority of the 3D processing and rendering that you have in your computer. So if you're a gamer, you need to have a GPU in your device. If you're just a business user, like you just have workstations, worksheets, Excel, Word, things like that, you don't necessarily need to have a graphics card, and most CPU processors have a graphics card built in. GPUs, like I said, have ranged in price from anywhere from $200 up to $2,200 right now from the different generations they have of those. There's two different manufacturers for GPUs. There's AMD, like we had for the Intel, or for the processor. They make GPUs as well. And there's NVIDIA. Those are the two manufacturers. Beyond that, there's different generations of graphics cards. You can have the 5000 series of the NVIDIAs is getting ready to come out. And then on the AMD side, we have the 7900 XT. Depending on what you guys are doing, your software might require different GPUs. but the majority of GPUs out there will do most stuff. When you get into high-end gaming, or if you're doing a lot of rendering, like say you're doing some video editing or some 3D rendering, then you want to have a higher-end video card. Like I said, these get pretty expensive. Next is your hard drive. So traditionally, for the last 25 years-ish, this is a mechanical hard drive. This is what you've had in your computer, and this is the laptop version of this. There is a platter, and you've got your head reader, and they have moving components, and these things spin at either 7,200 RPMs or 5,600 RPMs, and these are very, very easy to damage. And they're also heavy, they cause a lot of noise, they cause a lot of heat. I'm not a huge fan of these, so we switch these out with what we call solid state drives. This is your current kind of sort of solid state drive in a 2.5-inch form factor, which replaces the laptop hard drive. And this is about 5 to 7 times faster than one of these hard drives. Now you've got the NVMe hard drives, which look like little sticks, and these are about 7 times faster than this, depending on which one you get. So most people just think that if they see that their computer has a solid state drive, that it is a high performing computer. And while this is better than the mechanical hard drives, there is some disparity in speeds between the NVMe hard drives, which stands for non-volatile memory, and the standard 2.5-inch SSD that you see here. These can be 5 to 7 times faster than the standard SSD. So we always recommend going with an NVMe hard drive because it's considerably faster, and putting your operating system on this drive rather than using mechanical hard drives or even this 2.5-inch SSD. The nice part about 2.5-inch SSD is because you have a mechanical hard drive, we can actually clone this to a 2.5-inch SSD and transfer all your data and plug this into like a laptop and then have it boot up just like it was before. And from your perspective, it shouldn't have any difference whatsoever. So there are some differences between solid state drives and mechanical hard drives. The next thing is RAM. So we've got a couple laptop RAMs here. This is for laptops, and this is more for desktops. So laptop RAM uses a smaller RAM disk, and then the desktop uses a much bigger module. And just like we've talked about before, these have different generations. Currently we're on generation DDR5, which stands for double data rate. DDR4 is still very prevalent. We still see a lot of devices with DDR4, but DDR5 has been out for about 2.5 years now, and majority of those is coming in on the new computers, and they're much, much faster than the DDR4 or DDR3. So when we're talking about different devices, this is kind of sort of a standard business class computer anymore. Now that you don't really have disk drives anymore, this device can pretty much do everything that you need it to do. It still has an Intel i5, still has an SSD. Usually it has an NVMe SSD in it, so they're still considerably faster than computers from 5-10 years ago. It has RAM, but it doesn't have a disk drive and doesn't really have a power source besides the external power module. When you're talking about laptops, this is more of a business laptop. This laptop here has all the basic components, but where it lacks compared to a gaming laptop is it doesn't have a discrete video card. Discrete video card is what does all the game rendering. If you guys are doing any editing, this is where we want to have a discrete video card. And on the business class laptops, that's built into the CPU itself. So it's built into the CPU and doesn't have a discrete video card by itself. The main difference between just regular desktop laptops or workstation laptops and a gaming laptop, two big differences. One is the discrete video card that we just talked about, and then two is usually the gaming laptops have much, much better cooling than your standard kind of off-the-shelf workstation computer. So both of these really, really do a good job. This one runs much, much hotter because it has both a CPU and the GPU that's trying to cool. You can see the additional cooling over here, and we always recommend always having an under laptop cooler in addition to the cooler that's on here because these things just run considerably hotter. If you can get away with doing a desktop computer, your performance is going to be significantly better, usually 20 to 40% faster. Same components that's in a laptop as in the desktop, for instance, like an i5 versus i5. Your desktop's always going to run better than a laptop because it runs cooler, has better components that are inside of it. But if you have to travel and you want to travel around a lot and have a portability, then using a gaming laptop is the way to go. All right, lastly, we're going to talk about some differences between surge strips, which is this guy here, and a UPS, which is this guy here. So, Surge strips protect against certain voltages that go over a certain level, what they call joules. Most, like this one, protect to about 900 to 1,000 joules, but anything beyond that can still go past the surge and still fry your devices. Why UPS is so important? UPS stands for uninterruptible power supply, and this is a battery backup and voltage regulator. So it has AVR, which is automatic voltage regulation. So basically, this provides the power to the devices, and then the power coming in from the power company recharges the battery that's in here. These are well recommended for any devices that you guys have plugged in. If you're going to spend $1,500, $2,000 on a computer, you might as well have that protected. So you want to have that plugged into a UPS, and on here you'll have different modules you can plug into. One side usually has UPS and surge. One side usually just has surge. Most UPSs come with a warranty or a guarantee to where if something's plugged into it and it fails, you can file a warranty and get that device replaced. This one has a 3-year, $200,000 warranty, for instance. But the AVR is the important part. Not all battery backups have the automatic voltage regulation, which we highly recommend using that as well. So we have a lot of these in our store. We probably have about 15 running at any given time. And these have helped us save our computers over and over again when we have power surges and brownouts and blackouts. It's not even so much the power going out as it is those flickers of power that causes a lot of damage to electronics. Electronics don't like different voltage regulations. Power companies don't always put out 60 hertz, 120 volts all the time. It fluctuates, or there's a breaker that goes out somewhere. It causes a surge coming through the line. This will help protect that. So we highly recommend getting an UPS to help save your device as well. You can use these to help charge your phone, keep your phone protected, your home theater system. But what you don't want to plug into here is anything that pulls a high amperage, like a vacuum cleaner or a printer. But for the majority of your electronics, whether it be home theater systems, TVs, your computer, all those should use your UPS. Okay, so there you have it. There's the basic components of a computer. Again, you have a central processing unit, which is a CPU. Every computer's got to have something similar to this. You've got your RAM, which is your temporary memory here. Every computer is going to have some form of this as well. You have your hard drive, which is going to be either an SSD or a mechanical hard drive usually these days. Highly recommend getting an NVMe because it's going to be way better. Most computers have a graphics processor of some sort. But the gaming computers and the video editing computers are always going to have a discrete video card. That's always the important part. And this is the most expensive component in a computer anymore. And you have, like I said before, you have your cooler of some sort and a case of some sort. Depending on what your needs are, you can always get those things made however you'd like. They get pretty elaborate. We can do computers from $1,000 to $15,000. We can do pretty much anything as far as a boutique shop goes. But that's the basic components of computers. I really appreciate you guys watching today. Again, today's presentation is brought to you by Salvation Army, Salina Media Connection, Jabot LLC, and a digital grant through the Saline County. Thank you guys for watching. Please stay tuned for more.